Welcome to Trustee Talk, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dick Murgatroyd, and our guest today is Anderson Township Trustee and Second Vice President of the Board of Trustees, Andrew Kappas. Andrew, I should call you Andy, but Andrew.
You can call me anything.
As long as you do.
Don't call me late for dinner.
That's exactly right. But
Ton of pumps.
welcome back to Trustee Talk. You know, I always enjoy having you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you.
Because I know we're going to talk about budget now, which can be a very pleasant topic, actually. Then it can be a more unpleasant topic, because I don't think you guys are much different than other townships and cities and counties and state and God knows the federal government.
Well, they don't care about budgets at
care.
DC. They have no budget.
They have no budget at all. But I mean, it's a tough time. It's a tough time for governments to be able to function, because everything's costing more and you're making less. At the other end. So this is you're going into, as I understand it, you're getting ready, you're preparing for the 2015 kind of preliminary budget. And obviously, it's a little different than what you probably have experienced in the past. Interestingly enough, I remember that when you and Josh came into office, budget was one of the big issues you both talked about and focused on in your campaign. So, what's happening?
First of all, it's different now being on the inside, because you see the numbers and you see some items that you may not have seen on the outside. Not that there's any secrets, it's not, but you delve into it at a deeper level. And what we're trying to do is, of course, maintain and not increase spending, because obviously we have less resources. Property values have, thankfully, I think they've bottomed out and they're starting to come back, and the market in Anderson is fairly hot. We've managed to keep the budget level the past several years with no real increases, and that's a real testament to the leadership we've had, because, as you well know, our costs have gone through the roof on everything, and trying to maintain the status quo, keeping spending level, requires some very interesting juggling of priorities.
Well, and I think that just is, I think everybody's facing that, because the revenue stream is never keeping up with the expense side of things.
Not nowadays.
And you got, and I have to say, just in my short time I've been involved in this, that Anderson Township's done a good job of managing what the monies they have and how they've spent them, and they've done a good job of keeping things pretty stable.
The nice thing that we've had here in Anderson is we've had a very proactive vision towards budgets. Instead of reactive, which some townships around Ohio have done, instead of saying, well, we're going to wait till we see these decreases and then react to them, Anderson has had good leadership that has had the foresight to see what's coming down. The local government fund, one of the primary sources for governments from the state of Ohio, has been cut dramatically. And a lot of townships waited until that happened and then said, how are we going to recover from this? Anderson did not do that. We were very proactive, and our leadership before we got here was proactive.
And the local government fund, as you said, that comes from the state? Is that something that
it does come from the state? It's actually kind of a, the local government fund is kind of it's a funding mechanism, obviously. You send your tax dollars to Columbus, and then you're happy when Columbus sends you back a portion. So
and you're lucky.
You're lucky and thankful and appreciative. However, due to the budget constraints and balancing the state budget, that fund was cut drastically, or has been cut drastically over the last several years. Conservatively, the argument could be made that should it have ever existed in the first place? Because is it proper for us to send money to Columbus at a local level and then be thankful, if we send them $1, are we happy when we get 60 cents back? Yeah. I mean, once it chews through that bureaucracy, is it not more efficient for us to raise our money locally
and keep it
here? Yeah. So that's an argument that I'm not going to have today. I do feel for some of the small townships around the state that that's their only form of funding, is money from the local government fund, and they're really hurting. The argument also is, are some of these townships so small that maybe they shouldn't be townships? Should they be joined with other local municipalities and townships near them to form a larger township rather than a township of maybe 1,000 people or whatnot?
Well, and I think that, again, I think that's a tough one, because no one wants to give up their identity and their turf, and yet I think economy eventually will drive some of those smaller townships to have to look at.
The key word you hear nowadays, the key word that you hear among municipalities, townships, villages, et cetera, is collaboration. And what we're trying to do is see where we can join with either other municipalities or other townships, or even Cincinnati, and if the case might be, where we can collaborate together to solve a problem or to provide a service, so that there's not duplication of effort.
Which makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. The money is simply not there anymore for everybody to have their own street sweeper. Why do we need a street sweeper? Just for example, but why would Anderson have to purchase a street sweeper if Springfield Township had one that they could rent us?
Yeah.
That, 9 months out of the year, maybe 10 months out of the year is parked in a parking lot not being used, and we only need it for about a month or a couple of weeks. It makes sense. That's collaboration. Before, you did not have that. Now there is, amongst the different government entities, local government entities, there's a much, much higher level of cooperation and collaboration between us. And that's nice to see.
Which is good, because as you said, in a lot of cases it involves equipment and things of that sort, and that's not being used totally by one entity, and if that piece of equipment can be spread over several, it makes a heck of a lot more sense than everybody buying their own.
Sure. But that's the way it used to be done in the old days, and it's hard. It's hard to teach some of these dogs new tricks.
Very difficult. What are the sources of funding that the township has? I mean, the local government fund is one source.
That's one small source. The majority.
How big of a piece of the pie does that entail, as far as?
It's not. It's been cut back through the years, so it's not a large portion of our funding. But primarily our township gets money from property taxes. We don't have an income tax, as you well know. Your business is here.
Yeah.
Nor do I have any interest in forming. There is a JED-Z. Nor do I have any interest at all in supporting an income tax here on a local level. So it's all about Josh, when he ran, and I was very familiar with his campaign, Promote, Protect, Preserve. That was a perfect platform, because as we preserve the property values, we're really protecting our financial best interest. I mean, it's in our interest to make sure we preserve and protect the property values here in Anderson, because we derive our income from those very same property values. And if we let them slide, we're in essence,
then you're really in trouble.
We're really in trouble.
Is that the majority of the revenue source?
Yeah. Now we do get, the Racino coming in was a little bit of money, but truth be told, we've incurred costs down there. I mean, there's EMS and police runs that are protection being provided there at a level that maybe wasn't. It's booming. It's doing quite well, but it's not a huge cash cow for us by any stretch of the imagination, if somebody might think so. But we welcome them, and they're doing wonders for the property values down there.
Well, I think that a lot of people, though, in their mind, think that that is a cash cow. And the thing that, in my experience, you run into is you really can't depend on that to be an ongoing, the amount to be ongoing. It's going to change. And so you can't really put that in and depend on that as a major piece of your budget.
The legislature, we're trying to change. The legislature in the law for the Racinos, actually, the Racino's payment to the township is actually something that's decided every year to be approved by the governor. So that's something we're trying to change, to get that where it's written into that it's automatic without having to have the governor's approval or direction to do so. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but some laws nowadays that I've come to find out don't make a whole lot of sense.
No. Because the states want to make sure they get their piece of the pie.
I think they are. And, I'm not focusing on the Racino at all, but that's been the latest development that we've had. And they've been a great neighbor. The reports we have from everyone that's gone there is it's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's been excellent.
I don't know, have you been down there yet?
Haven't been down yet, but I've talked to a lot of people that have. They're really pleased, and it's been a great experience for them. And I understand the restaurants are excellent, and the whole complex is very, very inviting. And
it's just really going to spur a lot of the exciting thing about that area is it's going to spur a lot of economic development down there, which only increases our tax base. So that's the great thing beyond the Racino complex itself. Now, coming up this summer, you're probably going to hear an announcement that they're going to break ground on a hotel down there. That's not a very well kept secret. I'm so happy about that because
Sure.
you know there's more economic development, and satellite businesses will feed off of that, as you well know. You know.
Well, and I think that because it really makes it more of a destination for people, an entertainment destination, which I think is the beauty of that whole thing, because you've got the River Bend, you've got Coney, you've got the Racino, and they've already in their in the planning are making, they've got availability for events, weddings, receptions, banquets, things of that sort.
And I think they're only going to add to that.
And they'll just add to that.
And it's fantastic. I mean, not disparaging River Downs by any stretch of the imagination. That was a fine venue in its day, but this is totally a class above what was down there. Whole different feel.
Ballgame,
And so things like that. We have some unique opportunities coming up. Kmart, now you see Kmart here at the town center is closing. And some people bemoan the fact that it's closing. However, I tend to look at it as, well, now what can we do with that? And it opens up some really interesting possibilities to some new development here at the town center. And at the trustee level, we're trying to be as proactive as possible, not sit back and wait for a developer to call us. We're being not only trustees, but there's an economic development council here that's a committee here that's just fantastic. Some very, very best and brightest of Anderson are on that committee, and we're reaching out to these developers and saying, hey guys, this is available. Oh, and by the way, there's some foundation work we've already done up there that might be of use to you in future development. Is there any way we can, you know, work together to develop that parcel to its full potential? And we're always looking for ways to spur development, because development increases property values, which increases our income. Now, we've had some challenges. For example, one of our preserve and protect would be police and fire. And most citizens don't realize that in the last several years, just a few years, our police costs have gone, with Hamilton County, who's gone through the same budgetary crisis as every other entity.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've said, okay, we've probably been subsidizing the cost of sheriff to the townships, but now what we're going to do is shift that cost back to the townships, and they're going to start to pay 100% of the costs, which is fair. That's fine. But our cost used to be approximately just a little over $1.5 million a year. It's now over $3 million a year in a short period of time. That's hard to budget for years out. That's a big jump. Things like that tend to make you have to rearrange your priorities. So we look at every item and we say, okay, what are we spending money on? How can we, without negatively impacting, is there any way maybe some of the agencies that we are supporting or that we are doing work with can collaborate with other agencies and we can cut back on some funding? Any way we can, because we're trying to stretch that dollar. Our public safety levy is now 6 years old. It was designed, or when it was passed, it was forecast to be good for 5 years. So we've now managed to stretch that out another year. You didn't know that back then when you were running for election on the outside. Most residents wouldn't know that. Now that we're on the inside and we see the numbers and we are constantly aware of the fact that we want to stretch the dollar. The tax dollars are precious, and it's something you should go for a levy as a last resort.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and probably what are the two biggest expenses you have are protection expenses in police and fire. Is that not true?
Yeah, it's one of the higher ones.
Yeah.
And you know, to be fair, for example, we contract out with Hamilton County, and I think we get a wonderful value for that. I really am impressed when I see our police response. I think they do a great job, and I think our residents know they do a great job, and they expect it, and they're comfortable with the level of protection that we're getting. But you know, there's problems here that's not to Anderson alone, but Ohio. We have a huge heroin problem that is exploding. I mean, most of our viewers either personally know someone or know of someone that has been affected by this heroin epidemic. And the question is, do we want to ignore it, or do we want to be proactive and maybe try to get even more police presence here that can, you know, do a little more police work, leg work, drug work, undercover work? Because I don't want that taking hold in Anderson Township.
No.
Once it does, it's hard to eradicate.
And it's huge in this whole region.
It is.
Right now.
Heroin is cheap. It is the drug of choice. It is highly addictive and highly destructive. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but most people, you know, oh, that's not going to happen here, that can't happen here. It can and will happen here, and unless we take steps, I would like Anderson Township to be known as the neighborhood, the part of town that if you're up to no good, you don't drive through Anderson Township. That's really what I would like to have. We all had that growing up. Down in Texas, I knew not to speed in Bel Air. I went 35 miles an hour. If I went 36, I probably was going to get pulled over. I would like that same level. I would like the bad guys at least to know, hey, steer clear of Anderson Township. Just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was here in the town center, and we had a rolling meth lab. I didn't know what a rolling meth lab was. Caused great excitement.
Yeah.
A gentleman was driving through Newtown. The police were running the plates. His number popped up. Just so happened that as they were stopping him, had they stopped him 20 feet into Newtown, we wouldn't have been called, but he rolled into Anderson Township. So our fire department had to jump into action. If you would have seen the resources it took for a rolling meth lab, now he was making meth in his car while he was driving.
Wow.
I barely can talk on the phone when I'm driving.
Really.
This gentleman was ambidextrous.
I was just going to say,
But he was literally, had started the chemical reaction, surrounded it with ice packs, and it was in between his legs as he was driving through. And the reason they do that is the fumes are toxic, so they drive with the windows down. So we had to call out not only our fire department, a pumper truck had to be there, we had to have hazmat there, and we had to have a bomb squad, a bomb unit out there, because the stuff can blow up.
Yeah.
We need to have those resources available to respond to that. That's just a sign of the times. Back in maybe years past, it wasn't that big of a deal.
No.
You know, if somebody
Never
was pulled
thought about
over
it.
with illegal drugs, they were arrested, the drugs were put into a sack. Now, instead of having one police car, maybe two, you've got 5 police cars, a pumper truck, a hazmat team, a bomb squad team, and a plethora of cameras.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
But I just added up that cost.
Yeah. See, and no, I don't think people think about that.
They
but,
don't.
But and that's where your expense gets greater and greater as those kind of things.
We have to have
become
those
part of your problems.
assets available, because, you know, if it had blown up, I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't have been a large explosion, but there would have been big enough. I've seen now, since I've been a trustee, I've seen 2 car fires. One was at Beachmont Racket Club not too long ago. It was outside of Anderson, but you know, you have to have I've never seen a car fire before. I've seen a car smoldering before, but these were fully engulfed. Fire truck shows up, boom. You've got to be ready to put that out. You can't, and that's why, you know, you have to have the assets in place. You don't want to call 911 and wait.
No.
You don't want to say the police will be there in 10 minutes.
And the fire is it's your department here in Anderson.
That is our own department, and I will say this, you know, I will be very frank. They have been, we open up the books and we show the firemen's union, you know, this is what we have to work with, and it is a two-way street. They've been very good to work with, and I tip my hat at the fire department and Hamilton County for that matter, because, you know, they have both been understanding that we're under budget constraints as well, and there's just not a blank check to come to anymore. But we have to, our costs are going up, and sometimes we have to look at what we're spending money on and prioritize.
Have you been forced at this point to have to make any cuts in services or personnel just because of the changes in revenue?
We've had to make some choices, cuts. We've been getting by with less, doubling up on things. We do subsidize some things that we're trying to see if we can somehow get some of the entities that we are supporting to see if they can drum up some money and support themselves or support them to a lesser extent. I think that it's only fair that we try that rather than simply say, oh, well, we've been spending it, we have to continue to spend it, because we have taxpayers to answer to. Coming up this fall that the taxpayers are going to see, the school board has decided they're going to put a bond levy on for facilities that you're probably well aware of. So that's another bite into John Q. taxpayers' pocket. So is it something that I want to say, oh, if they're going to have one, let's have one too? No, I'm a very fiscally conservative person. You run your business conservatively. I run my business conservatively. I think that our taxpayers expect Anderson Township to run its businesses conservatively as well.
And they have done that, I think,
they have.
overall.
They have.
They have, yeah. I think it's just that, as you said, that you're facing some challenges. I mean, what are some of the other major budgetary items that you've got to...
Well, maintenance, I mean, is public works, maintenance. We have, thankfully, I mean, I've been, and I encourage anyone that wants to go down our public works buildings behind the fire station at Beachmont, if you ever are bored, want to go hang out. Richard Shelley would love to see you down there. But I mean, I see guys, when I walked in there and I see our guys patching trucks, not with new sheet metal, but with unused or reclaimed street signs, I take pride in that. Now, is it something that I want to make a habit of? No, I don't want to see a Sanford and Son truck driving down Beachmont Avenue and saying, well, those guys are the most fiscally conservative bunch on the planet. But it is nice. I mean, they could go out and buy stock steel at a high cost. But because of being conscious of what things cost, I've got a stop sign that's too beat up to put on the street, but I'm going to reuse that stop sign and I'm going to patch the bed of this truck with it. I like that. That to me is good.
Well, it's trying to make do with what you can find. It
ain't pretty, but it works.
No, but it works. It fills
Nobody sees the inside of a pickup truck.
They don't at all. But well, because I mean, and again, that's a fairly high expense equipment-wise. That's a high.
We've stretched the cost. We did spend some money, as we talked about last time. We bought a fire truck. We used to replace them at every. We've stretched it out another 20% as far as replacing fire trucks. Police cruisers, we're under an obligation to replace police cruisers, but now we've even stretched that. But I'll say, you do reach the law of diminishing returns at some point.
It starts costing you more money.
Starts costing you more money, and I don't want to call 911 and have the fire truck break down on the way to the accident.
Right.
Or call for a burglary or some emergency and have a police car chugging along at 15 miles an hour. I mean, they're driven hard, and they are maintained very well, but they're not your daily putz around town cars. You want them to perform, and we want to be as vigilant and as possible. We want to also respond as quickly as possible in a safe manner.
In our remaining few minutes that we have left, I guess what can you say to the folks that are looking in today as far as what can they expect in the way of changes as you go forward now in the coming year?
Well, first of all, I think you're going to see a lot of exciting development in Anderson, and that's good, because anytime we can have a development start up, whether it's a tearing down of a building that's maybe not being used to its best purpose and put something new there, that increases property values. And when that increases the property value on Beachmont, that increases your home property value as well, because the entire area benefits for that. The development on the river, you're going to see more of that. You're going to hopefully see some development up here at the town center. I'm not a fan of any store going dark, but Kmart is closing stores all over the United States. It's not specific to Anderson Township. It has no reflection on Anderson
No,
Township.
that's been happening over time.
It has. But people like to knee-jerk and say, oh my God, what's wrong with the town center? They're losing Kmart. Well, they're losing Kmarts all over the United States. That's just the way it is. Rather than look at the glass half empty, I like to look at it half full and say, we've got a unique opportunity there now to do some really interesting development that might be something totally different than that's in Cincinnati right now. I would like, I would prefer to see something other than just another big box store go in there. I'd like to see a developer come in and say, is there any way we could do maybe a retail with apartments above? And I could be in one of the few locales in Cincinnati where I could walk to the town center for my groceries, and then walk right across the parking lot to a metro center and take a bus downtown. I don't need to drive my car today.
Yeah.
That's a neat idea. I'd like people to understand that we are looking at government as much more of a business than maybe has been done before. And sometimes that's some hard choices. I understand that.
Well, it is, and I think if they can understand the reasons behind it, the more you can educate them, I think the better they can understand.
And that's one good purpose of this show. Most people don't. I wish people would come to our trustee meetings more. They're fun. It's nice to look out in the crowd and see faces. I would encourage more people to get involved and find the true numbers. Most of our viewers probably don't know that our costs for police have almost doubled in the last 2 years. The fact that we've managed to stretch out a public safety levy an extra year beyond its life expectancy is fantastic. But eventually, we're going to have to address the fact that we've got some hard choices to make. And my philosophy is, as a last resort, go back to the taxpayers, not as a first resort. And I would like them to understand that, because I think the tax dollars are precious and should be preserved.
They should be. Well, you know what? I don't envy you at all. But I thank you for your service, and I do wish you the best. I know that it's going to be a tough some choices you're going to have to make, but I think you got the right people to do it. So
let's hope so.
Appreciate your being here. It's always good to talk to you.
Well, I'd talk to you here. I'd talk to you at Kroger.
Hey, I said I run into you. I said that's that was a fun thing. I mean, I enjoyed that.
It was. I did too.
I think they got good people thinking about this now, so I think the people got to feel good about that. So I thank you again, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you. Look forward to being back.
We thank you for joining us and sharing part of your day with us. We hope you have the rest of your day as pleasant and productive, and that you will take advantage of the opportunities you have to learn more about what's happening in the township. I know they would welcome you at their meetings, and they're always available if you just want to call if you do have questions. I'm Dick Murgatroyd, and on behalf of our producer today, who's Shane Reinert, and our director, Andy Crozier, we invite you to join us for our next Trustee Talk right here on ACTV. See you then. Thank you.